Communism. Who doesn't know communism? Chances are, if you grew up in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, or even today, you grew up in constant fear of nuclear annihilation from our Russian comrades. Even Alphaville's Forever Young, one of my favorite songs from the 80s, is about the societal impact of this constant fear of a nuclear fallout. Even after the collapse of the Soviet Union, America still competes against communist China and fears the insanity of communist North Korea. However, as defined by German philosopher Karl Marx, these are not real communist governments. The proletariat is not really in charge, and there's definitely no real form of equality. Now, what I'm going to try to answer in this video is if real communism is viable, and could society ever reach a point where communism would be possible? So, what even is communism anyway? I'm assuming that almost everyone here probably has heard of communism. Ideas, more or less, that everyone should be equal, everything should be shared, there's no rights to property or anything like that. But then if we go and think about communist Russia or North Korea or China, there's a large group of poor people who are much poorer than the rich government who seems to be living on the lap of luxury. I thought everyone was supposed to be equal. What is there that we're not understanding? Well, it's simple. Right now, most of the real-world revolutions, and especially the past ones, like the Soviet Union, they're on their second phase of this three-phase solution that is communism. The first phase is the communist revolution, where the proletariats rise up against the capitalist pigs and take over, which, they did. If you take Russia, for example, there's the October Revolution. Then they set up a temporary dictator with complete power. Yeah, they did that. There's Lenin, and now there's Kim Jong-un. These guys are not really temporary, though. Yes, Lenin did die, but then he was soon replaced by Stalin. See, this is where all communist governments in the real world have failed. They've failed to progress past the second point. They need a dictator who gives up their power and forms their utopia. That's the third and final step. Without this third step, it's not really a communist government. It's mostly just a fascist government that just has some communist ideals. It makes sense too. Who would want to give up their power? They have complete control over a nation. And in Marx's ideal world, they would have complete control over the entire planet. A single man, a single dictator. Who would give up that type of power? Let's think about Plato's Ring of Gyges. In that story, someone receives a mystical ring that grants them the power to become invisible. Now, this is obviously an awesome power, and you can treat yourself practically as a god. You have no real consequences. You can do whatever you want. You could go rob a bank. You could go steal someone else's woman. You can do anything. And the woman thing is a weird example, but they kind of use it in the actual text. But yes, you could do anything. There's no consequences. And basically what Plato's trying to say is that in a world without consequences, humanity will do something that will, sorry, I'm blanking on the word, but something that will, benefit themselves. Everyone works in their own self-interest. That's the basic rule of humanity. For example, babies are born and they want food, they want water. They don't really care that their parents are going through struggles and all that to get them. They just they look out for their own survival. That's how humanity is. Now, let's go back to, these communist leaders. Why would they give up their power? They face no consequence. Who's going to stop them? The people? No, they've already rebelled. They have complete faith and actually lack of power, so they can't really do anything. And, they're pretty much untouchable in their current position. So why wouldn't they, skim a little off the top? Why wouldn't they live a good life? Why would they give up their power? It doesn't make any logical sense, which is why, in the past, communism hasn't really worked. And that's also why I think in the present, it won't work either. We're not some great race of people yet. We're still very selfish. If you went up to anyone, even if they think of themselves as a great person, if we think of the Stanford, prison experiment, these people were, good people. They went to Stanford. Obviously, they're not terrible monsters or anything like that. Yet, even with this, they all kind of changed and became monsters and terrible human beings by the end of the experiment. All the prisoners, all the guards at least, they would abuse their own fellow students just because they had the power. Communism gives you full power. You're a dictator. You get full control over a full nation. So yeah, no doubt you're going to keep your power. And if you keep your power, communism can't work. But could it work in the future? Could humanity ever evolve to such a place where a human wouldn't be greedy? Someone would have complete control, in Marx's idea, of the entire planet. A lone human being. And they would sit back, say, hey, I did what I did. Now I'm giving power up. Does that seem very likely? No. Is it possible? I suppose so. Societies change. The world changes. Governments don't last forever. Ideologies don't last forever. Although Aristotle has been around for a long time, eventually he's going to disappear. Eventually we're all going to disappear. I don't know if it's going to be a nuclear explosion, a fiery death, or whatever that kills most of humanity, but there will be a time where maybe there's a smaller group, or maybe we're just a more civilized race, and communism does become possible. Maybe it's I believe that it's going to just be the final two solutions. Either we're going to become a utopic communist society where everything is shared, everyone is happy, or we'll kill each other. Now, it depends who you believe, Hobbes or Locke, but I do believe we're either going to go to one of these extremes eventually, because everyone wants to live in a happy society, and that would technically be the most utopic one, where there is no real struggle, get whatever you want. Even a lot of dystopic movies, where they build the ideal utopia, they always start off with, everything being accounted for. You don't have to pay for medicine, you don't have to pay for food, you just kind of get everything. And yes, you work, and you work hard too, but, it's a good life. Now, this might be possible in the future. This also might just be possible in the future and then corrupted, like any good dystopia movie ever. But I personally choose to have hope for it. I think maybe in a distant future, after all of our societal norms of the present are completely gone away with, maybe a communist government could last. Maybe it won't. Maybe we'll all kill each other. I mean, if we're looking at the direction we're currently going to, we're not doing so well. There's climate change, there's nuclear warheads and stuff like that. We could technically just wipe ourselves off. I think it's important to realize that we're just humans on an insignificant rock in an insignificant part of space, and maybe something even larger. Maybe we'll all kill each other. Maybe we'll all go to the communist ideal society. There's no real way to tell for sure. Sky Bender, have a great day.